Hey everyone, this is Zephyr, and welcome to the Bailiwiki channel, where we teach everyday DMs how to create truly amazing experiences for their players by combining art and technology. If you're a DM who likes to wow your players, and you're using platforms like Foundry Virtual Tabletop and Dungeon Draft, then you're in the right place. Today, we're finishing our two-part series on automated animations for Foundry VTT. This time, we're sprinkling in the 3D component with Ripper's 3D Canvas. If you're just now joining us, you will need the following modules for automated animations to work. Automated animations itself, sequencer, socket lib, and then either the Patreon or the free versions of the JB2A animations module. And of course, since we're working in 3D, you'll also need Ripper's 3D canvas. Getting started with automated animations in 3D is very similar to getting started with it in 2D. So if you've already watched part 1 of our automated animations tutorial and you're already familiar with the global settings and global recommendations options for automated animations, you can go ahead and skip ahead to the timestamp on screen right now. And if you'd like to review that video in its entirety, you can click on the card up in the top corner of the screen now. For those of you who are new to automated animations, it works off of a few different pieces. So with automated animations in our module settings, we have a menu that we can launch, and this is our global automatic recognition menu. Within this, you can see that there are several different types of effects and automations. And within these, you have different names for equipment and magic effects. Now, these are what are going to be cross-referenced with the abilities that you're actually using in-game. So if you use a weapon that has bow in the name, it is going to apply the animations associated with the bow. It's always going to pick the most exact match though. So for example, if you have something that is called a crossbow, it will recognize bow, but because there's a closer match in the form of crossbow, it will instead play that animation. Now this will also work for things like a crossbow +1 or something like a crossbow of warning. That will still be picked up as a part of this recognition system. If you want to get more advanced, there are the triple dots here, where you can force exact matches or exclude certain search words or item properties. These are, again, a little more advanced and not something that the average GM is really going to run into, but there may be some exceptions where you want to take advantage of that. Within all of these templates, notice that there is the 3D Canvas tab, which allows us to configure the actual 3D animations. While there may be several of these different pieces, it's important to note that not all of these support 3D. For example, range and melee and on token all have 3D options, however, templates do not. Templates are supported natively through 3D Canvas and don't use automated animations to handle any of that, so they don't have a tab available. It's important to note that on these, because they lack that 3D Canvas side, they're going to play some of the automation pieces that are built into it. So for example, if you have this remove template ticked, it is going to go ahead and remove the template in 3D, even though it doesn't have a 3D exclusive tab. Auras also lack a 3D canvas set. And the presets, since they are combinations of different pieces, they do not have their own 3D canvas set. And likewise with the active effects options. Those do not have 3D. So the three sections that are governed by automated animations for 3D are melee, range, and on token. So you don't really need to worry about configuring any of these if you're only using automated animations in 3D. That said, keep in mind if you make any changes to the 2D versions of these, that depending upon what you're changing, it may also affect behavior in 3D. If you want to customize these on an individual level, you can open up a character sheet and you can edit the AA tab right here. You can see right here that we have animation enabled. If you toggle this off, it's not going to ever play any animations. If you have it enabled, you can see that this is a sword, so it has been recognized there. If you want to customize it, you simply toggle on this customization and you can construct your own piece. Again, more on that is in the first video, so if you want to review that, go ahead and check it out up on the top screen. But that is where we're going to be doing all of our different customization. Now let's take a look at what some of these animations are. We've already demonstrated some of those earlier, but we can see that we have slashes and stabs and everything involved with that. Also fire pieces like crossbows. We can see that there's little animations playing on the tokens, etc. Not just visual representations like we get in 2D, but we also get these nice effects from the 3D canvas aspect. So if we want to go ahead and customize things, we can take a look at our friend the mage here, and mage is going to blast Eustace the Undying. So we fire a firebolt. After the roll, it's going to have a spin around and shoot fire. If we want to take a look at all of the customization options, we can once again open up the automated animations menu. We have the global match. If we decide to customize the item, we have all of these properties here. You'll notice that it starts out by default as a club, etc., with nothing filled in on the 3D canvas. If you're adding a new animation for 3D, you can hit enable, and that will allow you to customize that. Otherwise, you can leave it off and it won't actually have any separate animations there. A quick way to customize something for a specific token is to click these three dots and hit copy from auto recommendation. And if you hit yes, it's then going to go ahead and have all of these different pieces. It also saves all of the bits from 3D. So let's go through the different pieces here. Projectile is, as it sounds, throwing a projectile of some sort. 3D object is like the short sword animation we saw earlier, where it is as if the token is using the object to attack. Ray is a constant ray of something. Explosion is a explosion centered on the target. And finally, token is going to just play the token animation. We can customize the sprite. It's going to automatically start in the levels 3D preview or the 3D canvas folder structure, and in assets and particles, you can select any of these particles, but it will accept any kind of PNG. You generally want these to be white and clear. This is File Picker Plus from Ripper that allows us to see these previews, but you can also just play around with them or toggle into the tile views, etc. to review your different options. So you can customize any of these sprites. For example, right now we have the Ember Small. If we want to change it, we can select something larger. This is a pretty different look to it. So if we select that file, you'll need to submit in order for your changes to take effect. Then if we go ahead and cast that firebolt, we'll see that the particle is very different here. You can go ahead and change that back or to any other sprite that we want. We can see that we have two colors here that you can customize. And you can either select the exact hex code or change it using this color selector. This color selector will vary depending upon the browser that you have. This is the desktop client, so it uses a Chromium browser. So just keep that in mind if that doesn't look exactly the same. And we can see we have kind of a primary color of the front-facing projectiles, and then a different color for the trails. For options, we have a whole lot of different pieces here. Speed simply makes it travel faster, so if we double it, you'll see that it moves very quickly. Repeat allows you to have multiple projectiles. So for example, this mage might be at level 10 and having 3 firebolts here. So if we submit that and we fire the firebolt, we're repeating the action 3 times. Delay causes us to wait longer. Scale is going to increase the size of the particles. Arc changes the severity of which this is going to loop around. So we can see it does kind of a zigzag. So the higher your arc, the more it's going to twist and turn on its way there. Alpha is the transparency. So you can see that when we shoot it normally, it has a little bit of transparency and you can kind of see the things underneath it. But when we up it to 1, it's a lot more opaque as it travels. This is a little less noticeable on things like Projectile, but is more clear on the 3D object. Gravity indicates how much this is going to kind of dip. So you can set this as a pretty high number and see how that affects the firebolt. So the trail dips down quite a bit from it. So mass is simply the weight and size of the projectile. You can see it has a little bit more oomph on it. Life is how long something lingers. And so the trail lasts longer. Emitter size we can get kind of crazy with. And that changes the particles on the outside. So we see that they are very large little pieces coming around. And with all of these, you'll notice that I'm able to delete and it will return to the default value. So if you're ever not happy with anything, you can delete these values and it will return to normal. Rate kind of speeds it up in a slightly different way, so it will actually close the distance a little differently from speed. This is another one that you should just kind of play around with. And rotate towards kind of changes how the arc functions. Just like in 2D, you can add sounds if you would like. Then we have, this is obviously the primary, but then we can enable the explosion, which is what's affecting the sprite itself. So you can either add a custom sprite here or leave it the same. If we wanted to have a different sprite, we can easily do that. And there are similar options for this that are going to affect the explosion. We also have token animations. So we have two token animations, one for the source, which is going to be the caster, another for the target, and we have different options here. You'll notice that all these different types, whenever you right-click on a token in 3D Canvas, there's the Animations tab that looks like a magic wand, and there's a variety of different animations here that you can play, such as the shake, etc. So if you're ever wondering what these look like, you can test them over here. So you can configure all of these, maybe a slash, and if you want this to have a different look, it's a really nice way to customize the look of different effects here. And you can change this to be at the start or the end, or play on both. Just like in 2D, if we use the firebolt from the Lich, this is using the global auto recognition. So we can see that it is different and independent from the mage. So we can use that customization to have different effects depending upon how your magic works. Different casters may have different ways of casting the same spell, or it might be flavored differently, such as a different kind of warlock patron or another source of power. To demonstrate what a ray looks like, we're going to use this ray of frost here from our Lich. And we see it's kind of just a beam, and those particles determine the shape of the beam. So we can experiment with that if we want to have something slightly different. We can fight with the power of love here. Depending upon your other settings, it may be easier or harder to see those particular effects. We have speed, repeat, and delay, which are all pretty similar to how we've covered it previously with the projectiles. And we see it moves a bit faster if we have a higher speed, etc. So these are all very similar to the other settings for the projectile. We have all of these different pieces to play with. When it comes to melee items, we can take a look at that in 3D Canvas as well. So once again, we'll copy from our auto recommendation and we'll customize the item here. Going to 3D Canvas, we can once again change the different items. And these are going to be using GLB files or 3D files. You can see the .glb is getting previewed because of FilePicker Plus here. If you don't have FilePicker Plus installed, then you can look at the WebPs as a thumbnail, but make sure you select GLB for anything that you're actually going to be using. So you can change these to anything at all. So for example, we could have a chicken leg for our weapon rather than a short sword. And we're going to bash someone with a chicken leg. Again, we have this set up as a 3D object, and that's what we're going to use for pretty much all of these melee pieces. And in our options, we have all kinds of different pieces. We're familiar with speed, repeat, etc. Something else that you want to take a look at is there is the rotation. And this is helpful for determining how you're going to be actually using the object. So when we attack with this, we can see the chicken leg is kind of rotating up that way. We can slow this down to make it a little easier to see. And if we delete this rotation Y, it's going to change the direction that this weapon is appearing in. So we can see it rolls that direction rather than chopping. So you can tinker with the rotations to make sure that your animation on your particular object is lining up. That's an important facet of using the 3D object type rather than the ray or projectile. The explosion type animation is the primary for the on-token animations, such as Cure Wounds here. And these function very similarly to the other options here. You have all these different pieces that you can tweak. I found that sometimes rate is a little bit volatile when changing things with the 3D animations, particularly with the explosion. So for any reason you don't have the animation playing properly, try adjusting the rate first and foremost. And again, we have all these different pieces. The final type of animation is the token animation. So for example, this uncanny dodge action that I've added to this here assassin, if I go into automated animations, I can customize it, and we're using this as the on token type. If we select the token here, this is going to just play the animation. It's the same kind of animation as you get with the projectile or any of the other options, but it's just stripping it down to only the one type. So we're going to have this on the source and twirl. That seems something that makes sense. And so now if we do the uncanny dodge, we're going to twirl around. And you can change that to anything that really makes sense to you. For example, maybe knockback makes more sense, as if you're ducking out of the way. And you can use this for any features like that you want a visual representation to that's easy for your players and yourself to use during your games. Now, you can see that there is not a global match found. We already showed this off in the 2D side, but you can also do this for 3D, where you can copy to the auto recommendation. And what this will do is it's going to have the label for the new global auto recommendation. You can either leave it as uncanny dodge, or we could also even shorten this to just regular dodge in case you have some other kind of feature that involves dodging, or it can then apply to taking the dodge action if you have that set up as an actual feature. But when you hit submit, then you'll have to close this out and then reopen it, and you'll notice that now we have this green global match found. If you ever want to check your global auto recognition menu quickly and easily, you can just click on it up here at the top of the AA item menu, and we are right here in the thick of the global auto recommendation menu. We see on token, there is now the uncanny dodge that you can configure. We don't have it set up for the 2D version, but we could easily do that if we so chose. One other thing that I want to show is that if you're ever unsure what any of these mean, obviously you can refer back to this video for a visual representation, but there's also the handy info box there that we covered in part 1, but it also is there for 3D Canvas, so it has some different information that you can use to remind yourself of what these things do. Sometimes this is all you need to jog your memory, and then you can play around with these different effects. And that's going to conclude our two-part tutorial on automated animations and closing out our 3D portion. I hope that you've enjoyed this and that you've seen kind of the power of automated animations for adding a lot of style and flair to your games without a lot of effort. It also adds some great potential for customizing according to each individual character or NPC that you are running. So in the comments, let me know what you're excited to add animations to in your games. Once again, this has been Zephyr with the Bailiwiki channel. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to keep up with all of our latest content, and consider becoming a patron. Not only do you support the channel, but you'll also gain access to all of the modular systems and scenes that we've ever made, such as this 3D village square map you've seen in the background. Thank you so much for watching, happy gaming, and have a good one.